Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be making hamburger soup. When I was growing up, my mom would make a version of this, and it was called beef and barley soup from a very famous cookbook back in the 80s and 90s, I guess. And I've kind of adapted it a little bit to make it a little bit more healthy, although it was very healthy back then too. But the thing with a soup is that you really can't go wrong. You can throw anything in a pot and most of the time it will be delicious. That's something that my grandmother always taught me, is just that whatever you have in your fridge, you just grab it, you chop it up and you throw it in a pot and you've got yourself a delicious soup. So I'm going to show you guys the ingredients I'll be using today. It's a very quick, simple, easy soup. So for the veggies, we've got carrots, celery, onion, and green beans, all diced and chopped into little pieces. We are gonna use some organic grass-fed ground beef. So I've got 2 pounds here. We're gonna have some organic crushed tomatoes, some diced tomatoes, and then for spices, we're gonna be using Italian seasoning, garlic, bay leaf, salt and pepper. Normally I would put in some fresh thyme and parsley, but my grocery delivery person gave me the wrong spices this time, the wrong herbs, I should say. So I'm gonna make do with what I have. Like I said, you can't go wrong. You just see what you have in your pantry, in your fridge, and that's what you gotta use. And then of course we've got our bone broth. This is one of my favorite brands. If I'm not going to make it myself, which I typically don't do, I do have soup bones in the freezer right now that I really should just make my own, but I really love getting this frozen Bonafide Provisions one. And again, this time they didn't have just the regular beef broth, so I took beef, turkey, lamb, and bison, and that'll be just fine. So I'm gonna start off by turning my stove on to about medium-high heat, and I'm gonna throw in some avocado oil to get my veggies cooking. Now when you're cooking on medium to high heat, you always wanna make sure you're having oil that is heat stable. So something like avocado oil or coconut oil is good for sauteing veggies and things like that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with my veggies. I'm gonna throw those in first. So for the veggies, I did about 1.5 humongous carrots. So I just happen to have like the really, really big kinds, but if you have regular size carrots, you'll probably want to do like about 3 to 4 small to medium carrots. I did 3 large stalks of celery. I did a whole, I guess, medium-sized onion, and then like a good handful of green beans, and I just chopped everything up. So now I am sauteing everything. And you want to saute until everything is starting to get soft and translucent, like the onions are soft and translucent. Of course, the carrots take a little bit longer to cook than the other veggies, but when you have everything in your soup pot, you're gonna bring it to a boil, and that'll help to cook the carrots even further. So whatever veggies you have in your fridge, you can just take and put in there. If there's something that you really love in a soup, just throw it in there too. So the veggies are cooking nicely. You can see that the onions are starting to become translucent. I hope I'm saying that right, translucent. Anyways, you can tell that they're coming along nicely. You want to keep stirring so that the bottom doesn't start burning. Sometimes if I walk away for a minute, I'll come back and they will have burnt a little bit at the bottom, because we are using medium to high heat. And depending on your stove, of course, they're all a little bit different, right? But mine tends to get pretty hot. So once they're about like this, we're gonna throw in the hamburger, the ground beef. I'm just mixing it all up here, making sure that the beef is nice and small, not too many big chunks. And then I'm just going to continue sauteing and mixing this up until the beef is cooked throughout. So our ground beef is cooked throughout. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because it seems to be pretty high, and I don't want to overcook the meat or burn the veggies on the bottom or anything like that. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and pepper. And if some of you have followed along with my other videos, you know that I don't measure, I don't really follow recipes. Sometimes I do, but for the most part I don't. I eyeball it, and you can never have too much salt though. Salt is what brings flavor to your food, not to mention all of the health benefits that good sea salt or Himalayan salt will bring. So I'll put some pepper, and then I will add some, sorry, I'm trying to do this with one hand here. I'm going to add some garlic powder. You could also, of course, use fresh, oh, I'm out of garlic powder, so just a little bit of garlic powder this time. And then I'm going to put in my Italian seasoning. Now, so I would put Italian seasoning regardless if I have fresh herbs or not. So at this point is when you would put your dried herbs. And then at the end, when you got your broth in there, so you can see I just like sprinkled the top of it, a nice little layer on top. Since I don't have the fresh herbs, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to put a little bit more. Because at the end, when you've got your broth in there and your tomatoes in there and everything is in there, and you're about to turn it up to bring it to a boil, that's when I would put my fresh thyme and fresh parsley. But since I'm not doing that today, I added a little bit extra dried spices, and I'm just going to mix that up. It smells so good. Soup is, I think, my favorite thing. I could eat soup every single meal, every single day for the rest of my life. I absolutely love soup. So next I'm going to throw in my can of crushed tomatoes, and this is like that larger can. I'm going to add my can of diced tomatoes. And then I will mix this all up. Next, I'm going to throw in the bone broth, and it's still slightly frozen, so you'll see that it'll come out in kind of a large ice cube. But look, you can even tell that all of the gelatin is in there, and that's how you know it's real bone broth as opposed to just I don't know what they have on the shelves these days, but you can actually see the gelatin and all the collagen in there. It's just beautiful. That's the real deal right there. So I've added 2 pouches, and so these pouches are 24 ounces, 1.5 pints. So if you're gonna make your own or use a different brand, you'll know how much to put in. So I will just start mixing this, and of course it'll melt within just a few minutes. So it's all mixed in. I've turned it back up to high. I'm gonna throw in a few bay leaves, and I'm going to cover it with the cover. And I'm gonna let it get to a boil, and then I'll turn it back down to low, and let it simmer for a couple of hours probably. The longer you let it simmer, the more flavor it gets, the better it tastes. And then the next day, when you're going to eat your leftovers, it tastes even better. Things are always better the next day, aren't they? So there you have it. I, in about 20 minutes, made a huge pot of soup. For our family of 4, this will probably last us at least 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 meals, depending on our portion sizes. My kids are always like, soup again? But it's like, yes, it's fall. And there's nothing better than to make a big pot of soup or pot of chili or something that you can just keep reheating and you don't have to think about what you're gonna make for supper. It's just the best time of the year. So when we go to serve it, I usually add a little bit more salt. Salt makes everything better. And we cut up some cubes of cheese to melt in there, and it's so good. And then we also sometimes will add crushed up almond flour cookies, the Simple Mills brand, the sea salt ones, and they're always really good in there. Other variations that I've made, like sometimes I'll add noodles in there, so like red lentil noodles or brown rice pasta noodles, depending on where you're at in your health journey. You'll want to pick something that's appropriate for your health goals. So if you have like something inflammatory going on, or you're trying to heal yourself of a chronic disease or metabolic disorder or something like that, you'll of course want to avoid the noodles, or sometimes I've put potatoes in there, so you'll want to avoid that. But overall, I mean, this is a very nutrient dense, very hearty, healthy soup. You've got the bone broth, you've got the spices, you've got the grass-fed organic beef in there. So it is a very, very healthy, delicious soup that, like I said, will last you, depending on the size of your family, for several meals. Here's one last look at the soup while it's coming to a boil here. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I will get back to you with any questions that you might have. If you do end up making the soup, let me know, take a picture. I'd love to see your variation of this delicious hamburger soup. Everybody enjoy.